This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Confidently Cherished. I am Keshia Rice, dating coach and hypnotherapist. And I'm really excited today because I have a special guest. And Sacred, I actually want you to introduce yourself and tell everyone what it is that you do.
Sure. So, hi, I'm so glad to meet everyone. Good to see you, Keisha. It's good to be in contact again. I am what I would call a visionary whisperer. So I help people who are visionary leaders to have a closer relationship to themselves, to fall in love with themselves again after a life setback, so that they can still show up powerfully in their vision and in their love lives. So I consider myself a visionary whisperer. And I'm also the founder of the Limitless Leaders Club. I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah. So, to your point about helping people fall in love with themselves, I'm always telling clients that, all relationships are related. If you have issues with your dating life, then you likely have
Mhm.
issues with your other relationships. For example, learning how to set boundaries is a big one that you know, women oftentimes have issues with setting boundaries in their romantic lives. And when you talk to them more, you find they have those issues with family members and with, you know, coworkers and friendships as well. So for you, whenever someone talks about helping people with self-love, there's usually a story behind it.
Mhm.
So what was your self-love journey like?
Sure. So, I speak a little bit about that in the intro as we kind of get started on the journey together with Limitless Leaders. But my journey with self love was that I had fortunately, a very loved household. I grew up with a mom and supportive extended family that I felt very cared for. And one of the biggest things that she taught me, even bigger than presence, was she would often sing into my spirit. And The Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston was one of those songs that always spoke into me about just being a child and having that potential. So I really grew up with this view of the world that love really could conquer all. And at the heart of us was that we are love. But despite that, I also had a lot of challenges. And so, as a kid who had a lot of hopes in the world, also overcame a lot of abusive history where I knew that that wasn't loving. And so, I had very early lessons in the difference between love and lack of love, but I never stopped telling myself I was loved. And that really helped me move through and really understand the importance of what I call becoming your own best friend.
You saying that, I was thinking about when I was younger and when, excuse the language, but I was a bit of a smartass. And and I used to say certain things that I did not realize how cruel and unhealthy they were. I remember being in high school, like, you know how it is as a young woman when you're in your teens and when you're in your early 20s, you have a lot of the creepy old men hitting on you and stuff like that. And I remember saying things along the lines of, "Oh, well, like, I'm not interested in these men because I grew up with a daddy. I don't have daddy issues or anything like that." And it is not until you start to get a little bit older, you start to do some inner work, gain that wisdom, that you realize that, first of all, it's not necessarily a matter of daddy issues and mommy issues, but there is so much generational stuff. We can say trauma. People tend to hear trauma and they think, the big T trauma, sexual abuse, major bullying and all that. They don't necessarily think of just the little T's of having parents who are trying their best, but maybe they didn't grow up in the best environment. So sometimes they falter a little bit. or having parents who are quote unquote neglectful because due to money concerns, they're working so hard. And then you have women who oftentimes grow up in what seems to be a fairly decent household. You know what I mean? They're loved, they're cared for, they know they're loved, yet they still end up being in these unhealthy relationships and unhealthy situations. How do you help women navigate that? Because I know with me sometimes there's a bit of guilt. Like I was taught better, I should know better. I don't know how I ended up in these situations.
Hmm. These are good questions. So, because I have the resilient past of both experiencing all of the challenges you mentioned, like I'm a survivor of sexual abuse, emotional abuse, witnessed domestic violence, and also still grew up very hopeful, I can understand both. And because I'm also trained as a mental health clinician and an interfaith minister, I do come in with an understanding of generational trauma and what's kind of embedded in us. Learned behavior is so tricky. And so, in Limitless Leaders, we talk a lot about what story are you telling yourself? And is the voice inside of you yours? Or is the voice inside of you someone else's? I happen to grow up, I'm Afro Caribbean, and I happen to grow up in a household that had strong beliefs about spirit speaking, embodying spirit, catching the spirit. Like there are all kinds of
Right.
understandings. And one of the things that I learned from that early on, from a mom who was very stressed and herself was facing her own internal challenges, was that she taught me early the voice that is speaking to you kindly, that's the voice of spirit. That's the good voice. The voice that is tearing you down and telling you you're not enough. What are you doing? How could you? That's the negative voice. That's the voice that's actually, whatever you want to call that, is going to be something that's trying to break you down. Because I asked early, how do I know the difference? What do I know? How do I know the difference? And so sometimes we underestimate what we are telling ourselves already. So you might have come up in a household that was challenged, and then you come across someone who is loving, and you actually can't even believe that someone can be that kind. So you're like, oh, yeah, right. I can't trust this. And your flames come up. That happens. Or you might have come up in a household that was solid and good and beautiful, but maybe there were messages that were passed down from generation to generation about what being a good girl meant. I know growing up, I was a straight A student, top of my class the entire time, teacher's pet. And when I tell you, hearing that I got my first 85, it was like the world is crumbling because I had this idea that being a good Christian girl meant that you always stayed lockstep. You never broke the rules. You never spoke up. Children were meant to be seen and not heard. So, yes, the household, when it was stable, was good, but it didn't mean that I had space for my creativity, my vision. If I laughed too loud, that was unchristian. If I danced too wildly, I was attracting all of that negative male attention you talked about earlier. So, just me coming into my own, I was blaming myself for just basic things, like just being authentic. And so I think we underestimate how being a good girl is reinforced in many communities. That oftentimes we tell ourselves, oh, if you don't like me, then I'm being bad. Well, maybe it's just that you don't like me and you're not the one for me. And so that's a lot of our coaching is, how do you differentiate the voice inside that's good and bad? And how am I attracting that on the outside? How am I attracting on the outside of me true, authentic love that embraces me, good, bad, or indifferent? And I think that's important to begin with.
Yeah. No, I want to come back to that point you made about being a good girl in a second. But before that, you talking about that reminded me of something that my grandmother used to say all the time, which was, God is not the author of confusion. And, I really wanted to have you on because you talk about being interfaith. And that is something that I've noticed, from working with my clients, from studying religion in college, that no matter the faith we're talking about, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all of them, that God is not the author of confusion, you know? And we get all these mixed messages And we allow ourselves to get kind of screwed up and tossed about. I think that's part of the growing process, learning like what voices to listen to. And then, the older I got, the more I started hearing my grandmother say that. She sadly passed away about a year ago.
I'm so
But
sorry. Yeah.
yeah, but hearing like the God I know is a loving God. So when I'm hearing voices in my head that are like, you're not worthy of this, you don't deserve that. Okay, if the God I know is loving, then these messages can't be real, right? So helping people find that clarity, helping women learn how to really listen and not get so caught up in this world that is filtered with people who we have relationships with, but even if they love us, they have their own agendas, right? Um, all these messages on social media, messages in TV. What are some of the things that you recommend to women to like help them really learn? Okay, like these are conflicting messages, these are
Mhm.
confusing messages. How do I really take the time to listen and be present and understand what are the messages that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because everyone's messages are so different based on your own story, right? And so this is why I think there's some power in being able to be matched and to work with a coach and to really get support on understanding what are your unique imprints, your unique fingerprint into what formed you, right? So I think that that's important just to name. However, there is something that I have found to be helpful for many who come and often ask me, I actually looked at that, the ways that generational wounds and generational love is passed down in communities. And one of the things that often comes up is, well, what do I do with this? And so one thing that I would say is that in how I define love, the V in love for us is transforming your vices to your victories. And I think sometimes your biggest vice, people don't often know, is that the biggest thing that people often reach out to for a coach or a therapist is for something that happened in their life that's outside of their control. Because the mind, like a wound, if you think of a wound, right? When a wound is healing, the mind goes to it, the body is itching, it's inflamed, you're trying to get help, right? So from a mind body health perspective, that wound is healing, it's bringing attention. So it's like, help, help, I need support. The mind works similarly. So the mind is like, that person said something to me. Like earlier today, I got a message, a very long message from someone. And I was like, wait, why are we sending text messages of
Walls,
emotions?
walls of text. Yes.
Walls. I was like, whoa, okay, wait a minute. We could have hopped on a call and healed this in minutes. Hear my heart, hear your heart. But it was like so much misunderstanding in walls of references of you said this, when, where, what. How do we do that sometimes in our friendships and in our romantic relationships? So I had to do this to myself this morning. And I had said to myself, okay, all right, so I'm hearing things outside of me that I know are not true to my character, right? You meet someone and they seem so wonderful and sweet. And the minute that you do something to upset them because you have the good girl, right? History, if
Right.
that's your history, then you're like, wait, am I not good? Wait a minute, hold on. Wait, I thought I was good. I was doing my best to be good. Am I not good enough? Did I not listen enough? Wait, hold on. Did I miss? And you get into your head the same way the wound is trying to heal. Like, catch me, put a band aid. Do you need alcohol? The mind is feeling like, if only I could have controlled this person would not have said something so hurtful. Why am I letting this get to me? Here's the catch 22. We have to turn that vice to victory because I had to gather evidence. Step one, gather evidence right now of who you know yourself to be. I know myself. I, in origin, am love. Song of Solomon speaks about love and spirit. When I began to heal as a Black queer woman and go, I am not evil, I'm not bad, I'm at the core of me good, that liberated something. So I was like, wait a minute, this person is calling me all these names. Wait a minute, hold on. Before I start blaming myself and gather, hold on, let me gather some evidence. Okay, so I'm a kind person. I do my best. I did reach out. I wanted to talk. I gave the option and I started gathering evidence. When I was little, I would sit by the pond and pray over the lake. If I saw an animal was choking, I wanted to pray over them, right? Okay, well, that's an evidence of good. Like, oh my goodness, I actually really helped a woman who was struggling with low self esteem after a heartbreak. And now she's finding the love of her life and loving herself more freely. That was good. So I begin to gather evidence because the mind is trying to figure out how it can control what it can't control. And
Right.
so I attach it to something else. So I gather evidence. And that's one of many steps. Now, this is a process. The same amount of time it took for you to tell yourself all the reasons why you're not good is the same amount of time it might take for you to tell yourself all the reasons you are good. But see, why this is important is because if I am not careful and I latch onto the wrong thing, then now, instead of it being my victory, where I begin to attract people who reinforce, I see you. Let's get on the phone. I see you. How about we clarify that and have a conversation? I see you. Let's grab tea because I know your heart. Let's talk. You see, I attract that. If I'm not careful, I'll attract someone who constantly reinforce all the negative things they see in me because that's how I see myself. So I'm going to ask you right now, if you're tuning in, write down 3 things about you that somewhere along the way somebody charged your character and told you you weren't. And it doesn't mean you don't look at yourself and hold yourself accountable, but I want you to, for a moment, if you are blaming yourself too much for one thing, gather some evidence, y'all, because we are that good girl thing is tricky. It's tricky. So let's begin to speak into our spirit about why we're actually redefine why we're good. And that's maybe one of many ways that will help. And that's vice to victory. But there's a whole process for that when we talk about in limitless leaders. But I just wanted to give a taste. I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to drop that nugget for those who are telling themselves something that's an old message.
See, Sacred, this is exactly why I hate talking with you because FYI,
But
I
me,
was
you're
on
the powerhouse. I love
FYI, I was on Sacred's show, so we'll have to
Mhm.
include a link to her interviewing me.
Yes,
But
and blew it up, y'all. By the way, she failed to mention that it was a powerful mutual conversation for sure.
but I hate talking with you because I feel like we could go on these tangents that could last hours and hours. But to your point about being a good girl, you know, I feel like so you and I both grew up in Christian households,
Mhm,
and we've also done some deconstructing, figuring out
mhm,
what works for us, what did not resonate for
mhm,
us. And one of the things that did not resonate for me is this idea that I in my head the verse keeps coming to mind of faith without works is dead.
it's dead. That's right.
And the different ways in which that is interpreted, as in like,
Mm,
okay, so if I fulfill the good girl list, if I am meek and kind and quiet, and, I go to church every Sunday and I appropriately cover myself, and I'm not out in the world with the hoes, and
mhm,
um,
mhm,
and I'm volunteering, and I'm at church the second the doors open, and I stay there until the doors close, then I'm going to leave college at 22, immediately find a good husband because also of course I'm straight. Um
mhm,
you know
mhm,
what I mean?
mhm.
And we're gonna have a bunch of babies, and he's gonna take care of me, and I'm gonna be like deliriously happy for the rest of life. And it's gonna be like a Disney fairy tale, they lived happily ever after, the end. And that did not work for me. I got married well past college. But also just this idea of like, I must be completely submissive, not just to a man, but to the system, to the church, to do the things that, like, whatever church I attend, those elders say, that preacher says, I must be completely submissive to that and never question, never think for myself. And, again, I've been using the word church, but I minored in religious studies, so I know for a fact that, like, other cultures have the other religious faiths have the same situation. It doesn't work, right? Like at some point, you have to learn how to think for yourself, question for yourself, heal your own patterns. And, I wonder for you, what do you think is kind of the solution to this, to helping men too, but helping women see that, like, at some point, this idea of constantly being the good girl is stressing you out, taking away your authenticity. It is killing you, right?
Absolutely. And if you redefine it, it literally doesn't have to, right? Because you can live you can be alive. People talk about work-life balance. You can be alive, but not feel alive inside, and then you're not fulfilled. So that literally will kill you. Literally will cause you panic attacks, heartaches that are not, heart attacks. It will cause you stomach issues. It will cause you all kinds of things. So let's talk about this for a moment. I think that we need to look at the power of belonging. We do not talk about this enough. We need to look at, do you have one, two, or a circle of people, a circle of sisters? I call them your Black and brown femme circle, or whatever you want to call it, that works for you. They can be Black, brown, feminine allies, whatever works for you. I'm thinking of it because I'm a woman of African descent, Afro-Caribbean, and having circles that I feel like I can belong into really important, really are important to me. And this is one of the many reasons why we look at limitless leaders, because I do not feel, if you do not have people around you that are mirroring back that you are good as you are. And you are good does not mean that you have to be meek, quiet, wear a lap cloth, wear a crochet. I was a big fan. Trust me, I stepped into my name, Sacred Walker, super clear. People get so upset all the time. It's like, oh my gosh, what do you mean you're calling yourself sacred? When I was in seminary and I stepped into my name, I said, God, I really don't understand. Why would you call me this after all that I have been through? And seminary is actually the first time I started calling myself interfaith, because people were telling me I wasn't Christian enough. And I had to look at that and go, oh, wow, you are doing things that are African descent. This is the part of who you are. You are doing things that are Buddhist. I had to find a community. And then once I didn't find them, I had to create it. And I've been creating communities of belonging ever since. It is super important that you begin to find others who, when you take that dance class, one of the biggest things I love is a heels class. I take it at Alvin Ailey in New York. And when I tell you we're in a community and we are dancing and having a good time and embodying sensuality, and yes, I'm embodying sensuality for my amazing partner. I'm really clear about what that energy is for. However, it's also for me, because I came from a legacy where I used to literally pray the devil out of me for the fact that I wanted to dance to anything but the harp and the organ, right? Growing up Seventh-day Adventist, love Seventh-day Adventist, love being that the whole day was about the Sabbath. And I also learned that anything above the hem of one's ankle was going to be the death of you, right? And so we need to really look at what messages we're telling ourselves. And one of the biggest healing things that I got was joining liberation theology circles that helped me to know that I'm loved just as I am, that God loves me just as I am. So I bring that with me. And so if you have a sister friend, you have a brother friend, you have a person friend, that you can just look them in the eye and say, I see you. That's sawubona. Taking a moment and just literally right now, or even look at us. If you are able to see us, or imagine you can see us, take a moment now and just imagine that we are your sisters. We are here, and just say, I see you. Because we moving so much, we hustling, bustling, we about to level up, do our thing, glow up. And we sometimes forget that if your spirit feels heavy, it's going to be real hard to feel good, to enjoy. I know people who are making 6, 7, 8, multi 6, 7, 8 figures, who are extremely unhappy on the inside until they find someone who can see them for who they are and love them. So I would say that is important. Find spaces that help you to feel like you belong, no matter how loud you laugh, no matter how short or long your skirt is, and no matter how full your creative presence is. That is important.
No, I think it's funny that you mentioned dance because it wasn't until I started taking belly dance that I
Mm,
really felt that I embodied that verse, "I'm fearfully and wonderfully made." It was in that movement that I was like, my body does all these amazing things. Like look at how I'm created. Look at the way I can move. Look at how it feels to just sway and be present and to just have that joy for no reason other than to have that joy, right? um, I think that's something that people miss when they talk about particularly femininity and sensuality, that sensuality is not for a sexual partner. Like yes, I'm a married woman. I know it enhances that. But I think the main reason why it enhances your love life is because it is in that you start to really feel yourself, be present in yourself, understand who you are, and that is what is so attractive. Not necessarily the look at my hips, but look at how free I am, right?
mhm.
Um, but and see, you've got me off on another tangent. But back back to talking about being a good girl. I also see how this manifests in a lot of unhealthy relationships because it's like growing up, we are given a formula. If we do this, then that. So if we love someone enough, we can fix them. And so often, as a dating coach, I get the question, Keisha, this person is abusive. They're mean. They don't show me that they love me. They hit me. They, all these different things. How can I make them XYZ? And I'm like, you can't. There is no there is no level of you being an angel that's going to stop this person from being a devil, right? I think and so often we're taught, well, if we just work a little harder, if we just love them more, then we can fix these things, and we're commanded to love, right? But sometimes we have to learn how to love people from a distance. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is allow people to face the consequences of their own actions, right?
Mhm, mhm. Agreed, agreed. So this is a specific sore point for me because as you and I have talked about, I come from a history of domestic violence, so I don't play that. That is one of those like I say cheating, beating, no, 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 right? And I've also one of my first internships coming out of college, before I went into my master's, was at the Anti-Violence Project. So we would do the hotlines and people would call in. And, later on, we ended up doing a retreat with the team and talking about hard conversations of what people hear. And then people have also reached out and similarly said, you know, um, this person is speaking down to me, or they're watching my every move, or, you know, X, Y, and Z. So here's the thing. Here's the thing that I've noticed. And I don't think we talked about it enough. We talk oftentimes about daddy issues. We don't talk about controlling mom issues. And here's the
Yeah.
catch 22 we need to really look at in many communities. Okay, I'm saying our community, but many communities. If I come from a household or a legacy, it could be aunt, grandma, whatever it is, where I'm used to being the everyday superhero. I'm the visionary. I'm the one who always has it together. Cha-cha. So I'm the good girl I'm the go-to, right? So I work with a lot of go-to folks, right? They are the go-to and they just want to be able to exhale, let their hair down. And so they meet someone that finally understands them. They can finally be vulnerable with, finally let their hair down, finally, right? So, and I similarly took, belly dance classes. There's something that you embody. It's like there's something that you finally understand yourself, and then you meet someone, you're like, yes, you get me. Now, here's the catch 22 that I don't think people talk about with if you have any kind of history around controlling mom stuff. Number one, the thing that attracted them to you doesn't necessarily mean that's the thing that they're going to want you to continue to do because they see it as theirs. If you are working with someone who doesn't see you as an equal, there's a difference between someone who steps to the table and says, oh my goodness, she's powerful, she's kind, she has a good heart, she's smart, she's sensual, all of those things. And now that you're with me, I'm the only one that can experience those things because now you did it. You hooked me. Because they're not seeing the God in you has nothing to do with, they're not replacing your God. See, that's the thing. People get confused. It's like, yeah, God called me to take a dance class to discover myself again. God called me to write my story down so that I can publish a book to tell my story. God called me to wear more color so I can express myself as a Jamaican woman. And you came along, but you didn't replace God. So the things that God called me to do, I'm still going to do. Now I'm going to do it differently because I'm in a relationship. I'm going to respect my relationship. But the control comes when suddenly I feel that I have the right to tell you what you can or cannot do with who God called you to do. I'm not talking about stepping out of your relationship. I'm talking about showing up authentically. Where are you going with that on? Who are you talking to? You still trying to go to that dance class? You should be at home with me. You trying to wake up and pray? You didn't even make me breakfast yet. See now, you see how now you're trying to become my God because my God told me to wake up and pray. So here's the catch-22. If you come from any history of control, you started telling yourself that if you just said the right thing, did the right thing as a good girl, mommy or a mommy figure would love you. And that's just I understand them. I'm the only one that understands them. That's the trick. So now you tell yourself, just like mommy, if you had a controlling mommy or controlling daddy, if you're not careful, because being good doesn't mean you weren't controlled. If you're not careful, now you meet someone and you're like, but I'm the only one that understands them. Yeah, they're a little controlling, but at least they get me. At least. So here's the thing. If we don't take time to understand ourselves and unpack that narrative of love and control go hand in hand, we will mistake, oh, he just wants me to take that off because he loves me. No, boo-boo. It starts with that and it ends with something else. Now, if you feel uncomfortable in that and y'all agree as a couple, that's different. But we have to begin to look, I didn't show up and you didn't manifest in my life for me to coach you. I would introduce you to a coach or a therapist if that was the case. I don't need to get love in place of control. So now I get to release control. And when I understand me, I'm not just feeling like, finally, you understand me. It's like, oh, I understand me. So, you know what? I understand that I don't like to be controlled. I understand that I don't like to be spoken down to. I understand that you cheat on me once and I accept it. I'm teaching you that I accept cheating, right? These are the messages that and then I can say, you know what? No, you can't be in my life anymore because the God that manifested you will manifest somebody else too. And I don't have to feel like you are the only option, right? Because you are not mommy, you are not daddy. Let's not replace those people with other people that did unproductive things. And I'm not saying if this is speaking to somebody great. If you can't relate, that's okay too. But I think we have to look at that within our communities so that we can change what we're telling ourselves about people who really get us and we get them.
Yeah. You saying that, and I'm going to add something to it that is
Please.
fair warning. Please put your triggers to the side on this. Just take a moment, just take a pause. Pause this episode literally if you need to, go grab some water. Okay, if you're back. Masculine energy, and I want to be very careful when I say masculine energy, because to Sacred's point about controlling moms, there are women who are very full of masculine energy. Masculine energy plugs into feminine energy. Think, if you don't understand that concept, think about it in the physical, biological anatomy sense. And when a man physically plugs into a woman, we all know what I'm talking about, right? So that is not necessarily a bad thing, where those energies are meant to come together. I always tell everyone that relationships thrive on polarity. Whether you're talking about heterosexual relationships or even, same-sex relationships, there's typically one person who's more masculine, one person who's more feminine. This is the way things naturally work. That being said, you have to be very careful when you are expressing that feminine, that authenticity, that creativity, that flow, that nurture, that is so powerful. And there are some people who seek to misuse that and mistreat it. So you have to be very careful about what you are allowing to plug into you. And you have to understand that people can receive from you, be nurtured by you, be loved on by you, and enjoy your light without them taking said light and putting it in a closet for no one else to see. So, Sacred, we're going to have you back on because we have so many other things that we can talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that alone, I was like, okay, I agree and disagree, but we're about to dive in because what you just said, I think, was really powerful about taking space for the light. What I did agree with everything that you said, and I just want to name this, is that at the end of the day, we all deserve to be cherished. We all deserve to be cherished. And I think I appreciate so much those who are tuning in and could really hear that, and the fact that you gave a trigger warning to be able to name, like, no one deserves to put you in a closet, right? Because your light is more to, is meant to be seen. So I just wanted to affirm and appreciate what you just said, and appreciate and value the power of being able to allow receiving love and light into your life. So I just wanted to name that. I just wanted to name it. And I look forward to next time for sure. Absolutely.
No, and I tried to say it the way I did because, my husband operates mostly in his masculine, but he has feminine moments too.
Mm-hmm.
And I plug into those too. There are times where he holds space for me. So it's not talking about, you've seen it on social media, the toxic, like all men are trash and women are complete angels and all that. Like there's toxic on both sides. But it is understanding that when we are giving and nurturing and cherishing, there has to be boundaries still in place.
Yes. Agreed. And it's kind of like I think of it as the yin and yang, where yang is the force, yin is receptive, but there's a little bit of yin and a little bit of yang in each that creates a balance. Because if I'm not in tune with my feminine energy, if I'm not in tune with my emotions, then I'm not going to be a healthy person. And if I'm just a doormat and don't know how to be assertive, I'm not going to be healthy either. But 100%, if we can look at whether it's being able to connect in with one another, or we can also look at how do we attract belonging? How do we find that maybe if you have lost yourself and you are convincing yourself that this thing is the only option, then you can plug back into that community to have somebody go, wait a minute, that's not who you are. Because nothing, just like illness, nothing survives in isolation, right? This is why the body works in balance, and relationships work in balance. We need to have someone else, a coach, a therapist, a community that can say, let's look at this pattern and why it is that you're finding such a hard time attracting someone who will keep you in the light, who's not intimidated by your light. And I think that's super key. So I really appreciate us landing on that point. And I absolutely plan to be back. Thank you so much. And would love to have you back. I would love definitely.
That. So in the meantime, before you come back, if someone is like, I want to work with you now, how do they do that?
Absolutely. So we are, depending on where you tune in and when you tune into this show, we are opening the doors. Maybe when you actually tune in, and the doors might be open already, or you might be ready for the waiting list and can plug into one of our coaches. But we have something called the Limitless Leaders Club. And it's all about helping us look at those inner critic moments and how we can center ourselves and feel clear and confident as the visionary leader that we are in our love life, in our businesses, in our careers. And it's going to selfloveforsuperheroes.com. selfloveforsuperheroes.com. So those are the best ways. And we have a weekly Wellbeing Wednesday that Keshia Rice, yours truly, will be on as well. And we do that live every Wednesday. So we're on Instagram at Ask Sacred, and we're on LinkedIn at Sacred Walker. But definitely, if you hop over to selfloveforsuperheroes.com and ES Superheroes, you'll see all of that information there, and you'll get a free gift for being a listener of the show today.
No, that sounds awesome. And I will definitely have it in the show notes. So, Sacred, thank you for joining me for what is now going to be part 1. And I will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Hey there. So you made it all the way to the end of the episode, which means I have 2 things to say. 1, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And 2, you like me. You really like me. So I would appreciate it if you would show that like by subscribing to this podcast so that more people can hear about it and enjoy it as much as you do. And if you want to know more about any of the links that I mentioned on this episode or any guests that I've had, be sure to go to KeshiaRice.com/links. That's KeshiaRice.com/links. I can't wait to talk to you again in the next episode. So see you then.